Casual Birder podcast, a weekly podcast for people interested in wild birds. I'm Susie Buttress. As a casual birder, I try to find time to watch birds as I go about my daily tasks. Join me each week to hear about the birds I've seen, interviews with others, and stories from listeners around the world. Dusty Gedge has been an avid birdwatcher since childhood. He is also an actor, performer, TV presenter, and president of the European Federation of Green Roof and Wall Associations. He tells me how the Black Redstart changed the course of his professional life and shares many birding anecdotes. I'm here sitting in a cafe overlooking the top of St Paul's, high up in London on a beautiful sunny day, and I'm here with Dusty Gedge. Dusty, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to be able to talk about birds because I have to talk about a lot of other things which I'm sure will come up while we talk, but everything that I've done over the last all my life has really been driven by birds. And one of the things when you contacted me is it got me thinking, it's one of those things in life that I end up pondering over a pint, like, why do I birdwatch, And I've never worked it out. It's a bit like, why do I love my son? Why do I love my partner? You can't figure it out. It just is. And so birds I always say they've been with me. I used to have a birdwatcher friend who used to sort of try and go like, well, we do it because of this, and they tried to go all analytical, and he said, oh no, I just like it. And my mother always says I fell out of my baby chair when I was 1, chasing a robin and cracked my head open, and I was never the same since. So maybe that accident sort of did something to my DNA that made me just like birds.
You said to me earlier that you grew up in Kent. Did you have a garden as a child?
Well, I was brought up in East Kent on the Thanet coast, so my garden was the coast. And, I can remember once walking on the rocks in the seaweed, and to my amazement, I scared this great northern diver in full summer plumage. I must have been about 8. And that for an 8-year-old, we didn't have the internet and stuff like that. That was just amazing. But the other interesting thing, which I know we will dwell on, is along the North Kent coast, and actually all around the coast of the United Kingdom in the south, I used to see wintering black redstarts, and I was very young, I wasn't aware how the relationship between the black redstart and myself would become very important.
I think I've probably seen about 4 or 5 in my life, and always in exotic locations, only once in my garden. Several years ago, I happened to be looking out of my window, as I'm always looking out of my window, looking at the birds in the garden, and a different bird turned up, sat on the fence and shivered its tail. And I knew that was diagnostic behaviour for black redstart, and obviously the colouring as well. But I'd never seen one, and it was there maybe 2 minutes and gone. But it's a tick for my garden.
There you go, yeah. Well, my little journey with black redstarts, I was known as Mr. Black Redstart for many years and became a bit of a national authority on it, which I don't mean that in an arrogant way. But I used to be an actor and a circus performer, and at the time I was running a circus workshop for truants, trying to get them back to school, young kids who were on the streets, and it was eventually funded by a project which was called the Deptford Regeneration Project, and the guy who funded me knew I was a birdwatcher, and he told the ecology part of that team that they had a birdwatcher because they wanted a birdwatcher to do some bird surveys. So I did these bird surveys, and lo and behold, we found some black redstarts, and there was about 2 or 3 pairs in the Deptford area. And at that time, because of things, there was the urban brownfield paper, lots of buildings going on, the post-industrial landscapes, because the black redstart used to be known as the bomb site bird. So where we're here now, there was a lot of bomb sites in the city of London. There was a lot of black redstarts after the Second World War. They first arrived in 1929, or the first breeding pair was about 1929 in Wembley Arena, of all places. And so they were going to build on all these places, but the great thing about the black redstart is it became a bit of a flagship for nature conservation because it's actually a protected species, because it's quite rare in the United Kingdom. Now, if you hop over to Boulogne and you drive through France, there's millions of them, but there's not a lot in the United Kingdom. And so where there's like 1% of the population or 10% of the population, the BTO or Natural England will go, that's very, very important. We wanted to get habitat put on developments in Deptford for the Black Redstart. Well, the only place you can do that is by putting them on roofs. So the second part of my life is I'm now the president of the European Federation of Green Roof and Wall Associations. I'm quite well known in the United Kingdom for green roofs. I'm a technical expert. But it was the Black Redstart in Deptford, and I always say then the rest is history, because that's that. So I used to go around London like at 3 o'clock in the morning with a pair of binoculars and find Black Redstarts on sites which they were going to build on, and I'd close the development down. So, I closed a lot of developments down. And while doing that, I also closed a lot of other developments down for a lot of other things. I closed down what is now Barclays HQ. I closed that down when the foundations were going in, because there were a pair of kingfishers nesting in a pile of builders' rubble, which had been there for years because the docks had all closed down, because it's Canary Wharf, and that was all still docks. I did the natural thing because I knew people in what was English Nature and London Wildlife Trust, and we could cause a bit of brouhaha. So, of course, Canary Wharf sent their expert to London and sort of sat with me, and he was looking at me as if I was really stupid, as if I was just some dumb geezer from London who didn't know what he was talking about. And he was and I said, well, where are you from? He said, I'm from the New Forest. I said, oh, you're from the New Forest? Yeah. He said, there's lots of kingfishers in the New Forest, Dusty. It's very quiet and peaceful there, because you've got pile drivers, bang, bang. I was really noisy when a massive construction site saw. And we were just sitting there, said, I don't think there's going to be kingfishers here. And after about 10 minutes, this kingfisher on cue flew, sat on the scaffold pole sitting outside of the rubble, flew into the hole. I said, I think you'll find that you will get kingfishers here. Now, the beautiful bit of that is because that set me up with a meeting with Canary Wharf, who then funded a lot of my early work, and also they were the first business to write a biodiversity action plan, a business biodiversity action plan. And full credit to Canary Wharf, they've just rewritten it. I've forgotten that I wrote the original one. And it's actually, hats off to them that they've really embraced with that. So the journey of Black Redstart Green Roofs has made me interface with a lot of people. So Barclays eventually was built. And then Barclays approached me one day at Green Canary Day and said, well, how can we help in the green roof research? And I said, well, shove one on top of your tower and it'll be the highest in Europe. And they did that in 2005. And I've actually seen wind chats on that roof in migration. Now that's 109? It's 32 stories. And what is also great, because while I was doing all this, I was also going to places like Battersea Power Station, where I actually found the first confirmed breeding pair of peregrine falcons. And what was interesting is the peregrine falcons were nesting in the northeast tower because it's out of the southwest wind, so peregrines often want to be on the northeast side. Right. But the black redstarts which were nesting there were nesting right underneath the peregrines. Now there's a reason why, because the peregrine's not going to eat a black redstart, but the peregrine's going to keep the magpies away. And so they were very quite clever, and I've seen this elsewhere in Europe where certain birds will go near top predators for protection. And my friend Dave Morrison is I'm really happy he gets credited with finding the first breeding pair. It was actually me, and me and Dave used to run around chasing the young peregrines that fell from the nest, their first flight. And you can read about this in New York, when young birds, especially in cities, peregrines in cities, when they take off, what happens in cities is often in June, there's not a lot of breeze and there's not a lot of lift. Oh. And a young peregrine often needs the lift. And so what would happen sometimes, and I know Dave still wanders around London doing this, and the guy in New York I'm seeing in 2 weeks, I mean, he's been doing it for 20 years. He's paid by the city to go and pick up peregrine chicks, fledglings. So we used to run around Battersea with the Clerk of Works, Bob Stevens, trying to catch these things so the foxes didn't get them. And then you'd have some big burly construction worker would then take it right to the top of the Battersea Power Station and put it back there in the hope that it would, the next time it took off, it'd get enough lift to be able to exercise its wings and be able to do what it does. Yeah. But I think, I don't know now, because I'm a bit out of touch with the peregrine thing, but I think last time I knew there was about 20 pairs in London. There's 20 pairs in London. You can see them over on the Tate Modern, which is just over the way. The Tate Modern is over there. There might be a pair sitting up there now, for all I know. But so that was that, and then of course you get to meet all these companies and people. So there's a lot of people that I meet who are they're boring corporate people in their suits, but then you find out that actually they're spider experts, or they're or they're bird watchers. And we used to go around Canary Wharf, a bunch of us, about 5 of us in the early noughties. We used to go down there. We all had passes because Canary Wharf is actually technically private land, and a bunch of people after 9/11 was walking around with binoculars, and doing, bird watchers will get this. You see something, and you kind of crouch and you peer like that. Well, for a security camera, that looks like that's not normal behaviour, And so the security guards used to be always on our backs, And eventually gave us these passes, and that was cool. And so we used to go around looking for migrants, and the amount of really, I've sat in Canary Wharf and watched bankers walking to work, walking past a wryneck, walking past a grasshopper warbler, and I've watched blackcaps flying up to the top of a tower from the woods. So when you get into that kind of urban bird watching, is you see things that they're out of context. Because if you wander around most people go around the countryside to watch birds. When you're in the cities, I always think when I was at Canary Wharf, I was going like, look, there's nearly 60,000 people work here. Now, 10% of them are going to be bird watchers, and none of them will think to come and look in this park. But they'll all rush off at the weekend to Dungeness or Sandwich Bay or whatever. But it's all happening here, I once counted, I think the biggest count was 5 o'clock one August morning. I counted 85 willow warblers just in Jubilee Park. And it's quite amazing, And the other funny story, if I may, Stephen Moss will remember this. Now, Stephen Moss writes for The Guardian. He worked with Bill Oddie. It just so happened that day I was meant to meet him. They were going to talk to me. I didn't actually get interviewed, but they wanted to talk to me about green roos down in Sussex, where there's skylarks nesting. But that day I was meant to meet him, I got a phone call from security, Canary Wharf, and they said, like, Dusty, we've got this bird with a very long beak, and it's all mottled and brown, and it's looking really stunned. And they sent me a photograph by email. I said, well, that's a woodcock. And it's quite funny because, I said to him, well, look, just take it up to West Ferry Circus, where there's a lot of trees, a lot of bushes. I said, like, take it up there, put it there, and, just leave it and see what it does. Obviously, they did this, and then I get another phone call. I said, like, it's followed us down the road, and it's now sitting in a policeman's helmet. So I said, right, look, I'll get up in the afternoon. I'm meant to meet somebody up there. So then Steve Moss, he rings me, or I ring him. I said, well, Steve, look, I've got a bit of fun here. I've got to take a woodcock down to Mudshoot Farm, which is the biggest park in the Isle of Dogs. I said, why don't we meet and you come and take me, and we'll let go of the woodcock down. And so me, Steve Moss, and another guy from the BBC, I think it was Springwatch. Yeah, I think it was Springwatch. Anyway, we walked it down, and it's getting dark now because this is sort of like November time, and we let it go in Mudshoot Farm. And, I get, and you'll see on Twitter these days, but at that time, I used to get maybe 15 or 16 emails or photographs of woodcock. After that, dead woodcock in Soho, because, in November, the woodcocks pile over to the United Kingdom from Scandinavia, and, they're all over the country. But in London, because they end up landing, they see a little park like Soho Park, they go in it, some people start walking, and then they go, get out of it, and then they fly and hit the windows because they get the reflections of the trees, which is very tragic. But it's just interesting that, there are a lot of woodcocks turn up in London. And I do actually remember a guy, an ecological consultant, birdwatch friend of mine, Neil Harwood, once rang me up and said, like, I've just had a wimble fly into, a wimble just flew into a tower at Canary Wharf. It's all right. A wimble in the middle of London, One of the other things, for 10 years I was chair of Lewisham Biodiversity Partnership, another one of my gravitases in life. But and I go out to Kent sometimes, go see my mum, and I'm walking around Stobmarsh or something, and then this kingfisher flicks by, and you hear this guy go, or this woman go, like, oh, it's terrible. I've never really seen a really good kingfisher, like, they're always scary and they fly away, it's a blue flash, and that's all you see. I said, like, I go, you need to come to Lewisham. And they look at me, Lewisham, what do I want to go to Lewisham for? I live in Lewisham, yeah. I go, if you go to Brookman Park, yeah, you go to Brookman Park and you sit there for 20 minutes, you'll have one sitting within a metre of you and it will not give a damn about who you are, because our kingfishers in Lewisham are really tough, yeah. They're really tough kingfishers. If anybody's interested in that, they just Google my name, kingfishers, and I've got about 3 or 4 videos of kingfishers in Brookmill Park, and that's fun. And there's a guy who got onto, I think it's, the One Show, I can't remember his name now, he took a lot of pictures down there, and there's a clip on the One Show of the kingfishers in Brookmill Park.
Wow.
And, you know, honestly, if you want to see a kingfisher,
That's what you
don't go to an RSPB nature reserve. Sorry, John Day, RSPB. Come to Lewisham, yeah. And it's a Lewisham Park run by Lewisham Council, so hats off to my council too, yeah.
Absolutely. That is fascinating. I mean, the thing you said earlier about how people in the cities don't even notice the nature around them, that's so important. How did you stop yourself from telling passers-by that these birds were there when you were looking at them?
Well, I think this is a nice thing when you first contacted me, because, you know, this reflectiveness, you know, I'm 54, I've been bird watching all my life, and I try and explain it to my partner, my son. I've been to Washington State with my son, and he's going, he's taking fun videos, and look, Dad's off watching the birds again. In terms of the question, I'm not shy about bird watching, but I don't have the need to talk about it. Right. Now, if I meet another bird watcher, I'll tell you every single bird watching story I've got. But if I'm going to sit in a pub with a bunch of my mates who, you know, they kind of know I'm a bird watcher, I don't really need to talk about it. You know, I'd rather talk to people about other stuff. And so when I'm walking down the streets of London now, and it's not because I'm embarrassed or shy, because I really am not. I don't walk around with a pair of binoculars in London, you know, I don't have to, you know. And so I am actually, in a way, though I'm a serious bird watcher, I'm actually constantly, in my whole life, everywhere I am, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I am actually always casually bird watching. Because, you know, my partner, she'd go to me, I look up like that, and I'm like, oh yeah, right, I've already clocked it, and within those 30 seconds I've gone, it's November, it's on migration, it's going somewhere, it's just come from Scandinavia, I've done all this thing. You know, when you see movies and I was about to die and I got this flash, you know, and you always go like, does it really happen like that? But it's funny, yeah, every time I see a bird out the corner of my eye, I've probably written 3 pages of you know, it's computed. Everything's computed, you know. Yeah. My God, that's a robin, you know, or something a bit unusual, like a penguin's flying over, right? Oh, that's maybe that one. And you do this calculation. I think any bird watcher who's really into it will get what I'm saying, is that in that second you just compute all this information. You've seen it in the birds of the Western Palearctic, in the Collins, you've got the map, you've gone, yeah, when was the last time I saw one of those, you know, and you do all that. Yeah. And that's the kind of anal bit about bird watching, because there is a lot of anal bits about bird watching, listing and all that. But so when I walk around the streets of London, you know, when I was waiting for you, just down here on Wood Street, you know, there's one blue tit there, there's one blue tit there, and, you know, I'm just hearing it. I don't even look for the blue tit, and, you know, there's a blackbird over there, you know, wherever I am in the whole world, you know, I am unconsciously got bird radar. Yeah. And a little thing that I think is relevant, because of my green roof stuff, I'm fortunate I get to go all over the world, you know. The only continent I haven't gone to because of green roofs is Africa, and I've been to Africa off my own back for other things. But back in August I was asked to go to Riyadh to be an external advisor on the greening of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, which sounds an oxymoron because it's in the middle of a desert, but, you know, it's very interesting what they're trying to do. So I didn't take anything with me because I knew that I'd be working full time and I'd be staying in this hotel. And so I'm walking around the hotel grounds every morning, and serious bird watchers will get this. So I walk around, I see a hoopoo, that's nice. There's graceful prinias. You always get in Arabia. There's always loads of yellow-vented boobles, you know, and they're everywhere. So you get there's loads of feral pigeons, or there's, you know, the pale rock martin, you know. So I'm doing all that, and then I go like that, and then this thing, what's that? What's that? It's a robin. It's a robin of some kind. It's a robin. And my brain's computing. I go like, is that Sharma? Is that what? You know, actually, it's all black. I go like, I don't know this one. I don't know this one. Of course, I've got no binoculars, got no camera, got no nothing. It's about 30 metres away. But those type of our robin doesn't do it. But those type of robins, they drop their wings, and their tails stick up. And most of the robin family, the non-New World robins, so not our American robin, most of them do that. And actually Black Redstarts do that a little bit, and thrushes do that, because they're all part of the same sort of grouping. So, you know, I get this oppose, and I go, that is a robin. So it's great now because you just go back inside, go on the Wi-Fi, you go Robin, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and up it comes. It's got two names. Don't know which is official. It's either the Black Bush Robin or it's the Black Scrub Robin. Yeah. Now, for those really, really thorough bird watchers, you know, the saddos like me, you know, what is really interesting about Riyadh and the Black Bush Robin or the Black Scrub Robin is Riyadh is the most easterly place it breeds. Oh, wow. It breeds from Senegal all the way to Riyadh. Now, see, I find that really fascinating.
You were seeing it.
And so you go like, yeah, there's its distribution, and the furthest east it goes is Riyadh province. You know, it's probably just outside the city. And I'm sitting there going like, that's fab. Now, I come home and I talk to my partner about it, and she's going like, well, so, you know, what? I go like, yeah, right. That's why I don't talk to people about it, you know. But my mate Charles Fenton will go like, yeah, he's going like, yeah, cool. And there'll be other people going like, yeah, cool, you know. And so there's that thing that as a bird watcher, you can only really share with other bird watchers. You know?
Yeah.
So when I sit in Jamaica Bay in a week's time on the Saturday after I've arrived, and I'm sitting there, and I think black skimmers would have gone by then, but you know, I don't know, a broad-winged hawk will fly over. You know, if I told my son I'd seen a broad-winged hawk, he'd go, "Oh, Dad, you know, what's up with you?" You know, but if I tell my Charles Fenton, and he go like, cool, you know, and so the bird watching thing is like, it's not an embarrassment. You go like, what's the point of talking to you about it? Because you ain't going to get it, you know. Yeah.
And I absolutely understand that, and it's frustrating because, you know, when you've got a passion, when you've got something you really enjoy, obviously you want other people to enjoy it too. But I think one of the things that comes with, I don't know if it's wisdom or just maturity, but it is one of the things you recognise that not everyone has to like everything that everyone else likes. And so, yeah. But what I was thinking about, though, was the fact that, you know, when you have got birds like snipe or something that's unusual, something that people won't normally have seen, and you've just got people just walking past totally oblivious to... on the one hand, I'd really want to point it out to them, but on the other hand, I recognise a lot of people just wouldn't care.
Well, I think I'm not trying to contra that, but what I think is interesting about me because of what I've done, and you know, I'm meeting people in pubs, and it comes up. I say, "Oh yeah, you was on Spring Watch or whatever," and then they talk, and you find these people go like, I really want to put some bird box stuff in my car. They're not really like bird watchers, but nearly everybody I meet has a bit of an interest in it. There's very few. But it just reminds me of something that happened last Friday after you contacted me, because I was somewhere, and I was down in Kent looking at a green roof actually, and I was talking to this guy, and I saw a Black Redstart on this roof down in Aylesford in Kent, and which I thought was quite good. So anyway, one of the guys from this company, he said, well, I used to be a bird watcher. And I kind of went, how could you used to be a bird watcher? I mean, that just seemed to be like a really dumb thing to say. What do you mean you used to be a bird watcher? I mean, like, you either are or you're not. Maybe you weren't really a bird watcher, I don't know, because it just sounded like a really weird thing to say. I used to be a bird watcher. What, suddenly... Birds attacked you and you suddenly go, I ain't watching them anymore or something, I don't know. But that seemed to me, I thought, so I think most people somewhere have some profound connection with nature. They just may not have surfaced. And there's a guy who used to clean the fountains at Canary Wharf, you know, and I actually saw him last week. I haven't seen him for years, but he's really into his spiders, you know, and all he does is he cleans some fountains in Canary Wharf, and he's part of the grounds maintenance team, but he's really into spiders. And we used to chat about spiders. You know, he's just a guy from Essex. He just likes spiders, and you go like, I like you. He can talk to me because he knew I was involved in all the nature stuff, you know, and I'd have facilities managers coming up, sending me in my mailbox. I get a little matchbox with this thing in it, saying like, "Oh, we found this, Dusty," and because they had me to talk to, they could then talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think there's always that thing, and it's not about me; it's about how suddenly people go. It's not like they've got permission, but they feel, oh, actually. You know, if I'm sitting, I talk to my manager about that, he's going to go, you know, is that relevant, you know? And so there's that thing, and I think, you know, there's 8.6 million people living in London, yeah, and I would have said 75% of them have some interest in nature. They just maybe not so conscious of it as somebody like me. And because I do a lot of work with the boroughs, or I have done with the boroughs and the NGOs and there's some good things going on in London for nature, which are actually benefit people too. I'm particularly thinking of a place called Kidbrooke Village, which I'm part of the Friends of Sutcliffe Park, which is part of that area. And it used to be a really tough council estate. I have mates who used to live on it, you know. And for whatever reasons, and there's probably some controversies about it, but it's been transformed, and you've got these great big ponds and lakes to store rainwater. They've got green roofs up there for invertebrates and bumblebees and black redstarts. And, you know, I've got people who used to live down there said, like, you know, our grandchildren are going to be brought up in a bit of a nature paradise, and I think that's kind of cool, you know. And I walk through there and I see the missel thrush, and I'm hoping one day a Balon's crake might turn up because I'm a bit anal like that, you know. And if it does, all thousands of twitchers will descend on Kidbrooke Village, and all the residents will be going like, "Get them away," you know, whatever, you know. That Balon's crake is not going to turn up. Maybe it will. You never know. Yeah, and I'll have my name in lights. You know, but you know, you walk around as a birdwatcher, you're going like, yeah, maybe this October something really interesting will drop in. I was actually down there 3 weeks ago, and a wheatear flew across a bit of amenity grassland. You know, it's kind of a nice bird in the middle of Kidbrooke. You know, southeast London. Yeah. So you know, but go back to that. The thing about, you know, so this is really about me being a birdwatcher, but what I've managed to be involved in because of the green roofs, which were originally put up for black redstarts, and then at that time there was a lot of information coming out from the nature conservation communities about how post-industrial landscapes were really important for a whole bunch of rare bugs. We've got 2 rare bees, bumblebees. We've got Bombus humilis, which is the humble bumblebee, and we've got the shrill carder bee, which are actually only found, their main populations are found in southern Essex, mainly on post-industrial landscapes. So we put these green roofs up. So we put a green roof up as part of the Olympics, the media centre, which was put up. Now the Olympics, my mate Gary wrote it for the Olympics, the Olympic Biodiversity Action Plan. So we got this green roof put up, which has got solar panels on it, and every single species on the Olympic Biodiversity Action Plan has been found on that roof. Now, there's black redstarts nested up there. There's a thing called the toadflax brocade moth, which is a tiny moth. It's quite rare. Feeds on purple toadflax, which is all over the roof. There's a little flower beetle called, you know, they're all, you know, what else? And Bombus humilis, which is the humble bumblebee, has been found on that roof. Now, people go on about the Olympic Park, which is great, but that little roof,
that has got more
important. Yeah. So the point there is, we stood up and looked around. Now we're in the City of London, and the Corporation of London have been really, really good. They were the early adopters of green roofs. They wrote the first planning policy in 2002. You know, I was invited to do a talk to the planners, and when I arrived, they said, "Look, don't mention black redstarts too much, Dusty, because the building you're in was delayed 6 months because of black redstarts, you know, protected species," which is quite humorous. And there used to be a wonderful planner there called Derek Reed. He was a bird watcher, yeah, very delightful man, and he pushed. And other people, but I just like to. He lives down in Eastbourne now. I haven't seen him for years. But Derek Reed was a bird watcher, and he used to walk around the City of London. But the point talking about the City of London is, it's 2002. It's now 2018. If you're a bumblebee in the City of London, you're virtually never more than 250 metres from a green roof. Now, if anybody goes on Google Maps and they start at Cannon Street Station, you've got Cannon Street Station's got a park on it, then you've got Nomura Bank next door to it, it's got green roofs, that level, there's another green roof next door to it. You start at Cannon Street, and then you slowly go through the city, up through Cheapside. You know, we're just here in Cheapside now. We can see 7 green roofs just from this thing. Now, nobody knows that they're there, and I quite like that, because there's a lot of nature going on in these roofs. And if people are interested, I'll just do it. It's a bit of publicity for Open Square Weekend. You get Open Square Weekend, which happens it's about the 19th of June. And Open Square Weekend do a green roof tour, which I lead with my friend Charles Fenton, who I met. And you know, you have to book early because it gets booked up, because it's one of the only ones that is not open. But some of the roofs you can go on, and it's a good thing because then people go up to look at them. And all 3 of those roofs, actually, all 3 roofs that we've visited over the 5 years have all had black redstarts on them. Wow. Yeah, and there's one like 50 metres away from here, and I want to celebrate them. Evershed Sutherland, a big legal practice. They're very proud of their green roof, and they're very, very proud of their black redstarts in not in a greenwash way, in a genuine way within that company. So the context there is, if you're walking around the streets of City of London, there's all this nature going on up here, which you're unaware of. Well, that's a good thing. We don't always have to be human beings in it, Now, there's a lot of parks now being built on green roofs, which is fine, but then I always say, well, the top ones where nobody goes, keep them for nature. And the important thing here, now I'm just a birdwatcher in the context of talking to you, but because of what I do, I'm also we talk about high-level climate resilience. So our green roofs, which are designed for biodiversity, are stopping flash floods, they're keeping the city cool, they're doing air pollution, they're doing a lot of things. So that bit of vegetation on the roof, which was originally driven by a bird called the Black Redstart, then it was about bugs, is actually helping London become climate resilient. And you can go to New York, you can go to Washington DC, you go to Vienna, which is the most livable city in the world, where my federation is based. All those cities are doing green roofs because of climate resilience. And if all those green roofs are designed to do really good biodiversity, not some industrial product, then that's a good thing too.
Can you tell me a little bit about this climate resilience you've mentioned? I don't think I've heard the term before.
Well, essentially, I think most people will know that climate change is happening, that actually nearly every city in the world recognises the cities have got to adapt to climate change. And so the climate resilience is cities from Melbourne to Portland, Oregon, to Auckland, New Zealand, to all the cities being built in China at this very moment. Most city officials, and Riyadh where I was, most city officials are going, somehow we've got to have a strategy to make ourselves resilient to climate change. So in a London context, what is happening, and this is actually it's a UK context, but London is unique because it's got its own government. So, and Manchester will have its government, has got its government now. So, probably other cities will have the same processes going on. Climate change, in any city in the world, two things are happening. We're getting more intense summer storms and we're getting heat waves. And we've just had the longest heat wave since 1976, all over the country. And we're going to get more of those. So the climate resilience is about how we adapt our cities. Because basically, London is not like a US sea. London is a European sea. It's got advantages, and it sounds a bit of an oxymoron because we got seriously bombed. So we've built since 1945. But essentially, we are a ancient city, and so the infrastructure is quite old. So how do you adapt a city like London to climate change? And and it's not the only, one of those is by greening up the city, whether it's at the street level or roof level or wall level. So what I do now, I don't spend my time talking about birds, I spend my time talking about that. But within that, because I'd like to bring it back to birds, if we can design that greening, not in some horticultural bling, but a meaningful way that benefits the local, the regional and the national, then that's a good thing. Now, a lot of the times in my industry, people go and say, I'll buy a green roof. But, it frustrates me. I've got a green roof. And I go, yeah, but it's not actually really the best green roof in the world. And we have I'm going to do a little plug, if I may. We have a little thing called, you just go to greenrooftraining.com. It's a guide I wrote with my friend John Little, who won an award last night, to tell people how they can design a really good green roof on their shed or their outhouse, right? And it costs, I think it's $11.95 now. We don't make any money out of it, but everything you want to know about greening a roof on your shed or whatever is in that guide. And the point there is, what we're telling people is, what are the wildflowers of Essex? Let's take those wildflowers and plant those wildflowers. So in London we have what is known as a London Living Roof mix that we came up with. It's partly adapted from the Olympic Stony Meadow mix. So we're saying to people, you plant stuff that is going to be climate resilient because it's from here, doesn't need too much irrigation. In fact, you shouldn't really irrigate anyway, and all the green roofers are beyond my back for that. I am the president. And if you plant and you construct with biodiversity in mind, and this is, a lot of people don't get this because I have to deal with a lot of engineers. If you design for biodiversity in London, you'll get a better green roof for climate change because it's going to be more resilient, it's going to be deeper, stores more rainwater, and it will cool the city more. So design for biodiversity, not for engineers. And so you could go out, it's a shame we couldn't get onto Evershed Sutherland because they've got, when you go to this green roof, originally it was what is known as a seed and blanket roof. They called me in and said, we want to do something a bit better for biodiversity. I said, well, what we do is we put all these mounds up, we plant vipers, bugloss, and ladies' bed straw, and, I can't remember them all. And we plant them all up, and, Bob's your uncle. So now, when you go on the tour or you go into their building now, as you enter the staircase to go up on the roof, there are photographs of Black Redstarts, wildflowers. I go, this is Evershed Sutherland, they're a massive legal firm, and they really bought into it. And the Black Redstarts feed up there, the bumblebees come up there, they got their honeybees, which bore me rigid, but, there are solitary bees up there, there's red mason bees up there. I've got one at PwC, which is another company that should be celebrated. They've got a roof down in London Bridge. We put up a bee wall, a habitat wall that John made out in Essex, and it's full of red mason bees.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's on the 7th floor in London Bridge, yeah. And I sit there, and there's a little video of that. You go Google Dusty Gedge, Mason Bees, whatever. And I've had Black Redstarts on there every year feeding. It's funny because they said, why don't they nest on my building? I said, well, actually, they nest in the construction site, the Berkeley Homes construction site, about 600 metres away, because they're kind of like construction sites, which is quite good because then I can close them down. I don't anymore. And Berkeley Homes, I was with Berkeley Homes last night, and I didn't do that. I just alerted them to it, because in the old days, nobody took due diligence, and all that stuff, closing down building sites and everything in the early days, is what's happened over the last 20 years. We've got the NGOs, the Wildlife Trust, the RSPBs. It's all celebrated, and then you've got things like the Construction Industry Research and Information Association. You've got all the constructors who are members of that. And over that 20 years, there's been a coming together of how they might deliver biodiversity better. They don't always do, their USB is to build houses or build roads. That's their job. We might not like it, but we all want to live in a house and we all want to go drive down the road. So, I think over the last 20 years of the time that I was being an activist and causing lots of problems for the construction industry, that there's been a coming together, and I think it's quite interesting. I've already mentioned Kidbrook Village. There's other ones. You go over to Elephant Castle, which is Lend-Lease. There was controversy over it because of social housing issues, but actually when you look at that from a greening perspective, Lend-Lease have bought into this. Lend-Lease, Berkeley Homes, they're selling their properties, say come and live in nature. They don't do this if they can't make any money, which is fair enough because it's their business. So, I like to celebrate that because it's important that we often get into an us and them situation, and sometimes we actually need to say, how can we come together to do something? And particularly in urban areas where, there is so much you can do positively without stopping people do what they need to do, which is build houses, Now, when you get out to somewhere like, to, what was I looking at the other day, Cleve Hill, which is down in Kent, where they want to build this big solar array on ground. Now, my personal view is, and I will probably get shot down, that's a good idea. I'm from that part of the world. We've got one of the second biggest wind array out in the sea there. And quite rightly, I think, and I am a member of the Kent Wildlife Trust. The Kent Wildlife Trust has actually done the correct thing. So, we need to look at this. We need to make sure that the protected species aren't harmed. We're not saying we agree with it, and we're not saying we don't agree with it. I think if I'm right, and the Kent Wildlife Trust can correct me, and that's the way to go, because basically we do need lots more renewable energy. If those solar farms can be designed for biodiversity, and I certainly know one of the big solar farm people, they're winning awards for the meadows that they're putting in between their panels, and those panels were on agricultural factories before that, and they weren't worth anything for nature. So those solar panels might actually make nature better in the countryside. And I know a lot of people in the countryside will find what I've just said not very, they won't like it. But, we've got to be a little bit more thoughtful. And it brings me another thing, because my favourite bird watching place when I was a kid, one of the favourites, is the Stobmarsh National Nature Reserve. Now, whenever I go to see my mother back in Kent, she lives in Birchton, I try and go to Stobmarsh Nature Reserve. I spent my childhood catching the bus out there and walking for all day long, seeing bitterns, and, we used to see a marsh harrier when I was a kid. This is like the early 80s, a marsh harrier was rare. You go down there now, there's hundreds of them. So I go there now, and people go, Dusty, this pristine wilderness called Stobmarsh National Nature Reserve. I go like, no, the Stobmarsh National Nature Reserve is only here because of a collapsed Kent coal mine. Right? And so what people got to remember, some of the most important places in the United Kingdom are not actually pristine wildernesses. They're there because of some human activity. So Heathland is mainly there because poor people managed it because that was all the land they could put their cattle on, or their horses, or whatever. Yeah, because we don't do that anymore, we have to maintain it. But it's there as a consequence of human activity. Yeah. So, you know, when we say, oh, look, the pristine wilderness, protect the pristine wilderness, you know, when was this country pristine wilderness? You know, I think it was when the Stone Age were walking around, you know. And I know a lot of nature conservationists will find that very controversial. And I'm a nature conservationist. But conserving something that is some Arcadian utopia? No, wait a minute. You know, if something can be developed that provides really good, meaningful wildlife, then that's a good thing.
I asked Dusty whether he still feels joy when he sees commonly found birds.
I don't go out deliberately to birdwatch because, you know, I live in London, I've virtually seen everything, and so I kind of casually watch through Greenwich Park with my telescopic lens and take a picture of a green woodpecker. But what I do mainly is now walk around with my macro lens looking at bees, And, you know, I've got all these bees, and the guy and I celebrate him, Dave Noten, who's a serious bee expert. He doesn't live too far from me. He's the Natural History Museum's bee expert, you know. And he comes up in a minute, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling the story. So I wander around taking pictures of bees, and I'm not really a bee expert. But I'm going to pause here, because when I started birdwatching when I was a kid in Kent, you know, birds are the gateway to everything to do with nature. So I was watching birds. Then I started doing quadrats when I was 12 of calcareous grassland. I got into butterflies, got into moths, you know, I got into everything. Now, once you get into sort of bees and serious insects, it gets really complicated in those days, because you'd have to go and get some really expensive book, and how do you identify them? You know, how do you identify these things? So you kind of give up a little bit. So, of course, the brilliant thing about the internet now is I can go onto the Bees, Wasps and Ant Recording Society, and I can put a bee on there and say, like, hey, guys, what's that? And, you know, Stuart Roberts and Matt, who run it, and David Noten, you know, they're generous with their expertise and knowledge, and they tell you. And I think the social networking has done a massive thing for citizen science and nature, because people who are not experts can share really quickly stuff and learn, you know. And so I like to celebrate Stuart Roberts and Dave Noten and Matt Smith, who run the BAR's website, which is the Bees, Wasps and Ants Recordings. Go on, click on it, you know, and if you find a record, put it on our record, yeah. Anyway, so I took this picture of this bee in 2014. You know, I went, well, I don't know, it's a bit funny looking, and I wasn't really up on my solitary bees, you know. I posted, I can't remember, on Twitter or something, I tagged in David Noten, and David Noten sent me an email. He said, oh yeah, it's a tawny mining bee, Dustin. I went, oh, it's a tawny mining bee. Oh, that's kind of good, it's a tawny mining bee. I like them. They nest on my green roofs down in Lambeth. Anyway, last year, he sends me an email, I said, oh, Dusty, you know, he didn't say it like this, but I'm going to say it, and I hope he doesn't mind. He said, like, you know, I know I am a bee expert, but I misidentified it. It's actually an Osmia canuta. Now, the first record of an Osmia canuta was this year in Barnes. But actually, the first record of an Osmia canuta was you in 2014. And I think they've written an entomological paper in it. Now, it's pretty big finding the first bee in the United Kingdom. And it's not really about me. It's just a nice story, that. And people like David Noten, who are really experts, or Stuart Roberts, they let you know. And they're generous with their time and their expertise. And so on that, I mean, I think the other thing is, it was really important for any bird watchers listening to this, and not the casual bird watchers, but the serious bird watchers, you know, it's really important that, you know, we give our knowledge and our passion and our wisdom to other people. And I find sometimes the bird watchers are all a little bit, oh, I'm clever, and so like, oh no, you've got that wrong. You know, you don't say you've got it wrong, you say, look, well, actually, you know, that's not a lesser white throat, and the reason why it's not a lesser white throat is because, you know, and I do see quite a lot of snootiness, and I think the birdwatchers are more prone to that. And actually, birdwatchers are not going to like this, you know, there's nothing worse than sitting in a hide in Stobmarsh listening to a bunch of birdwatchers talk. You know, you just go, Christ almighty, get a life, you know, get a life, you know. I won't go and sit in hides, you know, going, God almighty, oh yes, I saw this back then. Oh, did you? I think I saw one before you. You know, you're like, God, how big is your whatever, yeah, you know. But there's a lot of that goes on in bird watching, and I find it distasteful, actually. And it's something about that listing left brain, oh, like, look, I've got my list, and you kind of go, look, you know, can we just be a little bit more human about this? Because it's a damn good thing to do. And if there's an old lady who's just got involved in bird watching, have a chat with her.
Yeah.
Stop telling her that you found the first whatever. All right, I found the first whatever, because I did find a few first whatevers. Yeah, but so what? Does it matter? Yeah. And I'm probably being too churlish, but I think it's a very important thing to say that people of whatever age, of reasonable expertise, it would be remiss of us not to be generous with our support and our sharing of knowledge.
Thank you so much for your time today. I mean, honestly, it's been an absolute joy speaking with you, or an absolute joy listening to you, I should say, because I'm normally, I can't stop talking, but I was so rapt listening to everything you said. I really, really appreciate it. I had an absolutely wonderful morning talking to Dusty at the top of that shopping plaza near St Paul's. It was a gorgeous day back in September. Blue sky, a little bit windy, and I was surprised to see other birdwatchers out on the terrace. It's certainly somewhere I'll go back to. For more information, visit Dusty's website at dustygedge.co.uk. And the other links he mentioned can be found in the show notes. And thanks are due to Jane Perrone of the On the Ledge podcast for putting me in touch with Dusty. Jane's show covers the world of indoor gardening and houseplants. Do give it a listen. I love to hear about the birds you're seeing. Julia from Munich wrote to me. She said, I really love your podcast. Thank you, Julia. And also listen to the older ones, such as the one in which you had an interview with the Edinburgh birder. He said his last twitch was a mandarin duck. I find it interesting that these ducks are apparently not so common in Scotland as in Germany. In Munich, I can see them quite often along the Isar, a river that runs through Munich. So I wondered whether mandarin ducks are as rare in other parts of the UK as they are in Scotland. Well, Julia's email prompted me to look into the locations of the mandarin duck in the UK. I thought that they were purely park ducks, so ones that would be as part of a wildfowl collection in parks. But it turns out that though they are an introduced species to the UK, some of them have become established as a breeding feral population. The RSPB website shows a distribution map of where you might find them. There do seem to be quite a few of them around, but I've never seen one. So I'm now going to look more carefully for this species when I'm out and about. They have quite amazing plumage, extremely colourful. Have any of you seen mandarin ducks in the UK? Do let me know. Margie from Texas sent me a recording of the dawn birds. I asked Margie if it was an American robin singing, but she said she hadn't been able to see the bird. I mentioned that the call reminded me of our European blackbird. If any of you know what this bird is, tell me on Twitter or in our Facebook group. I'd love to know what birds you've seen this week. Join our Facebook group to discuss this week's episode, or post your photos of the birds you've seen. I really do enjoy hearing your tales, so come and join the conversation there. Find us at facebook.com/groups/Casual Birder Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Casual Birder Pod or on Instagram at Casual Birder Podcast. And you can email me at casualbirderpod@gmail.com. Make sure you don't miss any episodes by subscribing to the show. Subscribing is free and you can do it wherever you listen. And if you enjoy the show, please consider posting about it on social media. Personal recommendation is such a valuable way of helping others to listen. And I also love reading your tweets or your posts. Thank you to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at www.dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder Podcast.